Welcome back, Warriors, to another powerfully perilous episode of The Worst Fighting Game, the endless tournament where I pit the dregs of the fighting game genre against one another for the honor of sitting on top of a kingdom of dirt. And no one has been ruling said kingdom with an iron fist more than the SNES version of Pit Fighter, which, to reiterate, has only 3 playable characters, no weapons, no ending of any kind, and doesn't have an options screen. Anyway, this week I've decided to go back to the SNES and Genesis library for a game that has haunted me ever since I was back wearing short pants. That being Power/Deadly Moves, the localized version of Power Athlete, which is just as unremarkable. This very blatant cash grab to try and capitalize on the success of Street Fighter II is infamous in some circles, because even though it's 100% crystal clear about its intentions to ride them coattails, it also did a few key things very differently, and also very wrong, in an attempt to try and stand out. But will it stand out enough to put up a good fight against the sweaty, befuddling might of Pit Fighter? Well, we won't know for sure until we get it in the ring. The story of Power Moves is, well, it's brief, I can tell you that. Kaneko, a name some, but I assume most of you might not have heard of, coasted by much of the 90s without any real blockbuster games to its credit. There was Blood Warrior, Heavy Unit, and B-Rap Boys in the arcade, but nothing else of any real note. Oh wait, I lied, because they also developed Jackie Chan Fists of Fire, probably one of the finest examples of a solid but silly Parvati-style button basher that's still played to this day. But while Kaneko developed plenty of games on their own, they were also a publisher that worked on even smaller titles with even smaller teams. So enter System Vision, a developer that doesn't even have its own Wikipedia page. They started their not very long career in the video game industry with 2 very different experiences. Chester Cheetah, Too Cool to Fool, and our subject today, Power Moves/Deadly Moves/Power Athlete. And while that's definitely not the best way to start off on the right foot, their output did see improvement over the years. Battle Master, a Super Famicom game that never got localized, is basically a better attempt at what they were trying to do here. While Ragnagard, a Saturn fighter that looks like this, was at least a good deal more distinct and had some interesting concepts. Unfortunately, System Vision didn't survive much beyond that, ceasing operations sometime in 1997, and while Kaneko survived for a good deal longer, they went out swinging with an entry in their not-safe-for-work Gals Panic series as their final release, before legal troubles forced them into bankruptcy in 2006. So yeah, aside from Jackie Chan and Gals Panic, I guess, neither company really left much of a legacy. In fact, Power Moves isn't really known for its gameplay, characters, or innovations, but it might be known for one thing: this infamous magazine print ad. Don't see anything wrong yet? Don't worry, I gotcha. Yeah, these screenshots, no, something's not right here at all. Yeah, for whatever reason, the American advertising firm or whomever didn't have, or were too embarrassed to show actual screenshots of the game, so they had someone hurriedly fire up MS Paint circa 1992 in a thinly veiled attempt to try to fool the average consumer or stupid baby.
Oh my lord!
Stupid babies need the most attention.
Let's just hope the actual game holds up better than these anti-bull shots once I get into the... Now, if you're familiar with... Look, this game has technically 3 different names, but since Power is used in 2 of them, I'll just stick with Power Moves. Thank you very much. Anyway, if you're familiar with not-so-power moves, you'll know that in terms of its aesthetic and overall look, it's very basic. Milquetoast, dishwater, difficult to remember only seconds after you've seen it. Much of the game, the start screen, the character and stage selection, pretty much everything is just small portraits and text overlaid on boring black backgrounds, so it doesn't make for a very strong first impression. Now, it's not bad or irritating to look at, but it sets the precedent for pretty much everything that's yet to come. The portrait art of each character is decent enough, and honestly, this art makes some of the roster look better than they do in-game, because things definitely take a step down once a match starts up. Sprites are pretty low detail for the most part, with mangled faces and costume details that are simplified to the point where you kinda gotta strain your eyes to make them out. Since this was built from the ground up for 16-bit systems, you'd think it would have looked a little better, but I guess I'm expecting too much from System Vision. The UI, though, is even worse. There's just no flash or flare to anything. Again, the most basic versions of gauges and information you can think of. It's no wonder then that this lack of style translates perfectly over to our stable of fighters, as I can't imagine any of these jokers are going to be guest starring in any other fighting games in 2025. First off, we have Joe, an American martial artist trying to prove himself to the world. I've already fallen asleep. I mean, look at this guy. He's auraless, and he's the main character, for Christ's sakes. Anyway, this apathy continues with Vagnad, a burly Russian. You can tell is Russian because he's blue. Okay. Next up, we have not Chun-Li, Ray Yan, who specializes in what else? Kicking. Then we have Baraki. Moving on, there's Bo and Gao Luan, two martial artists that wear red and blue respectively, and that's all I have to say about them. Next up is Nick. He throws knives or something, I don't know. And finally, we arrive at Warren. Warren! This is a portly little fellow who hails from Hawaii and is awkward, odd, and has so little charisma that he has boundless charisma. He might be the uncoolest fighting game character of all time. In fact, make way, Fong! There's a new sheriff in town! Now, even though I already said finally, allow me to say it again. Finally, we have the game's big bad boss, Rancor. This is your Geese Howard stand-in who looks quite spiffy in his nose shirt and suspenders. He definitely has more going on for him than the rest of the cast, but that's not saying all that much. Now, typically, once I've mentioned the boss, that usually means I talk about the endings, or in this case, ending. Yeah, for reasons I'll soon be getting into, Power Moves only has one conclusion. Joe holding up some random title belt and going, "Yeah, I did it!" And that's all you get. This screen at least looks pretty good, but we don't learn anything at all. What would Joe go on to do? Did Rancor get a rematch? And more importantly than all that crap, what happened to Warren? The Giant Bomb Institution? These are questions that still remain unanswered. Moving on, much like most things, the backgrounds here are all stock as hell and are devoid of any life, in some cases literally, and very few of them have any sort of animation at all. There are some neat line scrolling effects, like on this one stage that takes place in Japan, but other than that, it's an absolute snore fest. The music, though, fares a bit better. Not every song is a banger, but there is one or two memorable tunes here and there, so that pretty much puts it on par with Street Fighter VI's soundtrack. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about the presentation of Power Moves, which is not a whole lot. I get this was System Vision's first fighting game, but everything is just so banal and uninspired. Like, hell, Human Killing Machine arguably looks way worse, but it's at least, like, crazy and memorable, you know? Oh, speaking of crazy, there are a couple of things that are just plain how shall I put this, wrong about Power Moves' gameplay. This strikes you as soon as you press up on the control pad, because your character does not jump, but actually walks upwards. This is because the stage floors give you a little leeway to move around, almost as if you're playing a beat-em-up, but like a really bad one. Jump is therefore relegated to a button along with a punch and kick, and that's it. 2 strike buttons and a jump. This obviously works fine in 3D fighters that use dozens and dozens of short commands to produce a ton of different moves, but that's not the case here. In fact, despite Power Moves being the literal name of the game, there are very little moves to be had, as each character only has 2, and honestly, very few of them are even worth doing. They're not difficult, they're mostly all button taps, back, forward, etc., but many of them are just so slow, unresponsive, or telegraphed super easily. Most of them are also made moot by the ability to just dodge them by moving up or down, which trivializes much of the gameplay, because it's not like Fatal Fury where there's this big slow animation of jumping into the background that you have to time. Here, it's just instantaneous. Weirder than that though? Notice anything? Like the lack of something? Yeah, that would be the timer, because Power Moves doesn't have one. Now, pretty much every game in this era would allow you to disable the timer, but having no timer at all at any time results in some matches going super long, especially since, and I can't believe I'm saying this, there's no chip damage, another baffling choice that makes Power Moves less of a fighting game and more of a mind-numbing slog. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this again, but that's not the end of it, because Power Moves also doesn't have any pushback when you're blocking, or at least certain moves don't trigger it. This means you can lock your ops the fuck down without even a sweat, and the second they try anything, they're going to pay for it. Like, you've gone to such great lengths to rip off Street Fighter 2 with your character designs and special moves, but you also can't rip off the basic tenets of gameplay that make matches fun and balanced? Something they also couldn't do is make a single-player experience worth a damn. Innovating several years before Rise of the Robots, Power Moves only lets you select Joe as the one playable character, which is where the quote-unquote ending I mentioned earlier came from. Even though everyone is selectable in the Versus mode, including Ranker via a code, for whatever reason, System Vision felt the ability to take any character through arcade mode and earn a unique ending gave Street Fighter 2 a little too much replay value, and you can't have that. In its place, there's a weird leveling system where Joe can increase his stats with each foe taken down. Now, you can't choose which of these stats go up, it's based on the values your opponent has, so yeah, it's pretty pointless. I get it's supposed to represent Joe improving and becoming the king of the battle fight tournament, whatever it's called, but I mean, it's a system with zero depth or thought put into it at all. Kinda like the... Power Moves is a lumbering dinosaur in terms of game speed. I don't think I need to say that because you can see it on your screen. Certain special moves slow things down to an absolute crawl, even triggering frame drops in certain situations, and whenever you knock an opponent out, you have time to go to the bathroom and back. The problems I listed before, the lack of pushback on block and walking up and down instead of traditional jumping, all work together to make something that's uniquely awkward and just doesn't feel good to control. I will say though that I've played far worse in terms of how it handles, but I've also played plenty that are better. It's just that the entire package has this non-dynamic synergy that drains the life out of you as you play it. Now, I do have to mention the Genesis version Deadly moves a bit more in detail here, as there are some curious differences between it and its power bottom brother. The speed of this version is a bit more consistent overall. Throwing Joe's Hadouken or feels more fluid and fast, while other moves and sequences feel about the same. There's other minor differences too, like the screen going straight to black during the winning round announcement rather than the monochrome thing that the SNES version does, but outside of that, in terms of graphics, things are pretty equal. Audio, however, is a good deal worse on deadly moves, with everything sounding way scratchier and low fidelity compared to the audio of power moves, and there's even some missing voice samples here and there. Still though, if you were to play one of these two versions, and I don't know why you would, but I'll entertain the idea, I'd recommend the Genesis version over the SNES one, just for the more consistent speed levels and the fact that Ranker is only available to play via a password in the Genesis version and is inexplicably missing from power moves, so, at least that's something. The only thing left to do now is to see where this boring blob of blandness stacks up against our former contenders and current champion. Back in the day, I tried my hardest to convince myself into thinking Power Moves was awesome, but I soon realized that this was the most massive cope ever recorded by humankind. I had purchased a pre-owned cartridge from my local video store, so it was one of the few games I actually owned, which of course went a long way into seeing value when there in fact is none. Deep down though, I knew it was boring and slow, and that has only been reiterated here. And if I've learned anything since then, it's that it's better to be a 0 or 2 than a 4 or a 5, and woof, that's exactly what Power Moves is. Still though, its playable cast of multiple characters, in versus mode at least, the decent music, and its options screen keeps it from knocking on Pit Fighter's door, so that's why I'm crowning it as a Grand Trash Master. And hey, at least that's more than I can say for Battle Blaze. But that about does it for today's mystifying matchup. But if you know of any other potential contenders that could possibly uppercut Pit Fighter SNES from atop its high but digitized horse, let me know in the comments below or head on over to the temples of my social media. Until then, warriors, I'll see you next time on the worst fighting game.